deaths of children from allegedly contaminated products has once again brought into focus the presence of foreign-owned Spaza shops in South Africa. The children died in two separate incidents 2 weeks ago in Soweto and the West Rand this week. To understand the township economy, we take a look at the phenomenon and ecosystem of Spaza shops. We're joined by Letswalo, a PhD candidate and co-author of the Township Economic Mistake, a book that looks at various issues in the so-called township economy. Now, thank you very much for your time this morning. Perhaps let's start with the research that you did on the Township Economic Mistake. How was it conducted?
Thank you so much for having me here. Well, the book actually, or the research actually, was inspired by a question, rather to say that how does local brands who are in the township get outperformed by foreign brands? So basically, we were actually interested by the nature of we have a very lucrative economy, but it doesn't actually pay dividends to the residents. So how is it possible that a lot of locally owned brands that we know from the township are actually outperformed by these new brands that are entering township, mainly Kingsley, Dragon, most of them pioneered by Through the Fruit, which is a distributor. So these go slows and new products that we're not familiar with are actually outshining the existing or pre-existing or even the entrant, products that are produced within the township.
We're going to get into that in a few moments, but I'd like for us to take a look at this concept, the township economy. What does that mean?
Yes. Well, the township economy mostly, it's actually mostly confused in the sense that it is mostly associated with the informal economy because of the historical, the historical background of it. But now, you see that the then informal economy is now integrated into the mainstream economy. So obviously, when the process of liberalization actually happened, when the political dispensation happened, you have townships now being integrated into the main economy, and actually inspiring, making a consortium. So from then, it actually grown from 1994 to date. It's now averagely estimated value at 900 billion rands. So you can see that this is actually well functioning, but it's mostly confused with the informal economy because of the informal economy. That is where it actually pre-existed, because of many townships and rural areas were ostracized from the main economy.
Because that's just it. Is the township economy in comparison to what? The urban economy or the rural economy or the northern economy or the economy of the suburbs? What does that mean in the bigger context of things in relation to what?
Well, for instance, you had the CBDs. You have the industries that are mostly located within, the suburb areas and also in the central business district. So the township economy mostly is like an economy that actually from the grassroots, it actually emanates from the informal, mainly Spaza shop and taverns that were situated there during apartheid trading, for local people, giving them necessarily goods. So it was not necessarily a formal economy or recognized economy. It was more of an informal before, because of a lot of establishments that were there were mainly informal. So people who had to go to CBD, such as, or not CBD, towns or, urban areas to buy groceries, to actually work. So a lot of economy was centered in the urban side, and the periphery, where we actually called it, being the township, where, some kind of a concentration camp where people were just extracted to work for urban areas. So it was not necessarily recognized historically. But now that we saw that the political dispensation happened, as I said, and you find that now the market is actually open, many companies such as ShopRite, and other companies are coming into the township now, taking advantage of this lucrative market and economy.
Exactly, because also you find big retailers that are also in the townships, and so is that also part of the township economy? And so let's take a look at the history of Spaza shops traditionally in townships in South Africa.
Yes, well, the history of the history of Spaza shop, it was actually owned by citizens, owned. We have some other businessmen, such as your Dr. Richard Maponya, and also Dr. from Pretoria at NAFCOC, actually the NAFCOC as a whole. So people who were actually pioneering there, people who were, businessmen, men who actually made sure that, they are expanding within the township economy. Now that you see the transition from ownership, a lot of people who actually owned those Spaza shop back then, it was on a basis of sole proprietorship, so meaning that there was no transference. So for instance, you'd find that if a person dies or a person actually get employment, no one can actually look after the Spaza shop the way the native or our grandparents or forefathers back then during apartheid did. And another thing, also the opening of opportunities for township people, it actually made them to concentrate more on the service-based economy. So remember that we were ostracized. The main goal for black people or black South Africans was to, look at, make their own means by establishing businesses that will sustain them. But now you see that the political dispensation came with a lot of opportunities, the knowledge economy being the one, people actually having opportunities to go to school, to find better jobs, and also the promise that was made by the African National Congress led government to say that, we're going to bring decent jobs rather than to actually, make a chokehold on this existing infrastructure and Spaza shop to enhance them to become integrated into the formal economy.
So that then leads to my next question from what you are saying. Is that what has led to the decrease in the amount of South Africans that actually own Spaza shops? I mean, where I grew up, from my cousin's place in Diepkloof, there was an auntie there that had a Spaza shop. That's where you usually go in the absence of having like, a complex where it has all these other stores and you can go there and they close at 9 or 10 o'clock. But we could always go to Aunt Doka's and you could find whatever it is that you needed. So what has led or what led to the decrease in the amount of South Africans owning Spaza shops?
Well, the decrease, as I said, it was led by, the opportunities that were there for South Africans in the township who were owning township. So, for instance, you're finding ShopRite coming into the township, providing employment for a lot of people. So, in a sense, a lot of people actually neglected because of many Spaza shop businesses were established as survivalists. So, in a sense, many people who are still owning them, especially in terms of mentality, they see themselves as hustlers. But now, so should they get any opportunities that is actually promising more than the one that they have, they will actually take it. So ShopRite is coming saying that we're employing people to become, cashiers. And a lot of people were more interested in having, having employment rather than establishing these businesses or enhancing businesses that they would inherit from their forefathers. And another thing is that the skills transfer, because of a lot of the forefathers, a lot of business owners, the grandmothers, the aunties who actually used to own these shops back then, they were actually doing it alone. So there was no transfer of knowledge. So after the person dies, there's no one to take care of the Spaza shop or know the ins and outs on how to run this particular business. So a lot of people were out-competed by these, one being multinational corporations such as ShopRite coming into the township. Others were also out-competed by the Somalis and Bangladeshis who actually came into the Spaza shop business. And then, they were looking at employment. So we actually would say that most of us compromised employment benefits over owning township businesses. And one thing I can actually attest and actually convey in this platform is that through the interviews, one thing I can say is that a lot of interviews, a Spaza shop would make about 1,500 to 3,000 a day. So you can see the revenue on an annual basis that it actually is more lucrative than any other employment. And a lot of people need to ensure, especially young people, I'm calling out to them and reaching to them like me, to ensure that, they actually make means to occupy the space. And this is the only way in which that we can actually enhance and, take back the Spaza shop from these foreign national-owned people.
The entrance of Bangladeshis and Pakistanis and Somalis, when did it start?
Well, the entrance of it actually started mostly around 2003. So remember back then we had Bangladeshis and Somalis, selling mats, selling curtains. So their main economy was that one, whereas they were actually reaching into Spaza shop, giving people credit. They were studying most distances. So one of the interviewees that who actually stayed in South Africa for like 30 years attested to this narration to say that they have stayed here for like 30 years, and what would happen is that they started with selling curtains, and then it escalated later on, and that's how it actually makes sure that a lot of them enter. Then another thing and most interesting factor is that it is not necessarily owned by individuals who you see every day as shopkeepers. A lot of people who actually, a lot of shopkeepers actually, they refer to their boss. So you'll find that in a block, within a particular area or what, all the shops are owned by one person. The thing is, it's different corners and different shops. So it's not necessarily, it's a monopoly of some sort. And others actually came as a result of employment. So they would actually employ a person coming from Somalia or Bangladesh, train them within the particular shop to run it as a shopkeeper, whereas the owner looked for other ventures and avenue in terms of business. So that is how they actually was able to flood this particular market and economy.
Now, in your research, what did you find in terms of mentality? You mentioned that, or there's instances where you don't actually take forward the business that you inherited from your forefathers due to a number of factors. Maybe there wasn't a skills transfer, but the mentality, what is the mentality? Because you're saying that people are chasing jobs, right? And they're chasing employment,
yes.
Whether it's because, or whether it's an office job, or whether it's owning a mine because you see that as a business. What is the mentality around the space? Because you can take over those spaces, but the mentality and the network, what is the ecosystem, what do you need to make it a success?
Well, you need, firstly, and I actually like that you brought this thing. Firstly, you need to change the mentality of a lot of young people within the township, because we actually constitute the majority now occupying these township areas. A lot of people see these particular businesses as hustle. So it's a hustle. Most of them establish them on the basis of being a survivalist. So because of the high unemployment in South Africa, then I will resort to becoming a street vendor, selling my suits at the corner there, hoping to actually make more. So you see that the mentality around businesses is not actually, to move the particular Spaza shop to make a corporation or even a franchise like ShopRite. So a lot of people actually, they establish, as you can see, a lot of quota joints, those who sell quotas, those who sell pubs, restaurants that are there. A lot of them are, they actually have this particular mentality of being hustlers. So they need to change their mentality, first things first. Secondly, is that, dependency. A lot of young people are very dependent on the government because of, I think that is how things were projected as well from 1994 going until to date. So government is actually holding a lot of responsibility by becoming a nanny state, and that is actually creating an absolute dependency. A lot of people would want funding to start a Spaza shop or be a street vendor. We saw back then our forefathers or grandmothers were starting Spaza shop under repressive environment of the apartheid regime. And they didn't actually, would reach out to a government to say that I want funding to establish this particular Spaza shop. So a lot of young people would want funding to start a Spaza shop, and once you get funding, this is the type of business where you need to scale up and understand its dynamics. So if you get funding, you will start by buying stock that is worth of, let's say, 250,000 as the funding as per the funding, And now you don't know first things first. What is the community? What do the community actually want? What is their preference? What? Like for instance, you can find that like ShopRite even does that recently. It studies the market. So first thing you actually stock your goods based on the general consumption. Obviously, necessary goods. But now you also need to look at the other dynamics. For instance, if you're actually trading in Soweto, you know that a lot of people there would prefer Mopane worms, unlike people from other places. So you need to have the market insight. You need to scale up. One thing that I would tell you, another thing interesting is that with Kingsley is a soft drink beverage that is actually now is actually making 18 billion rand annually in South Africa. So it actually started with a lot of sugar and a lot of acid. Once it started, a lot of people were criticizing it, saying that this particular brand has a lot of sugar, has a lot of acid. But now what is happening is that the very same customers were giving the shopkeepers a review. So when the people of Kingsley come back to say that it's a customer, experience. So when the people of Kingsley comes back to say, how is the goods going? They would say that, hey, a lot of people are complaining. They say you have a lot of sugar, a lot of acid. And they would know the customer's preferences. And they will go back and work on those particular things. Currently, you have it. It's actually making a lot of money without any advertisement, by the way. You barely see it advertisement, but it's actually owning about 18 billion rands of the economy. So you'd see that a lot of dynamics that are there needs to be understood. So what is happening now, a lot of people a lot of young people would actually wait for grants. Another promising market or promising sector within the township is an integration of street vendors. We have a lot of street vendors selling the same things. If one could actually integrate them, this is a market. And you create, for instance, a system where you would actually provide them with stock. So in a sense of bulk buying. So you know that a lot of one of the techniques that the Somali actually used is actually bulk buying. So they were buying in bulk, but it is not them individually. As I said when we started, that is some kind of a monopoly. So it's easy for one person who owns 7 Spaza shops to buy, to bargain on their Spaza shop when he goes to the supplier. But these street vendors are more scattered, and they actually stock with a higher cost without having any bargaining power because of they only stock few things. So you need one person who would come and integrate this particular, sector or particular market of street vendors and ensure that he supplies them and go and bargain on their behalf. So these are the types of opportunities that are there. These are the types of opportunities that young people need to actually look into. And I am reaching to them to say that this is the most lucrative economy ever. So don't be like Africa. And what is happening is like what is happening in Africa. We are sitting with valuable minerals, but you are least developed. You can't be having a 900 billion rand economy, but yet you are poor. Take advantage of this because of foreign people, even the ones from the urban areas and businesses from the urban areas will migrate there and exploit you.
This is when that saying makes sense, that knowledge is power and unlocking the mind. Letswalo is a co-author of the book called The Township Economic Mistake. Now it's widely available at bookstores, online?
Yes. Yes, it's available online. It's also available at Book Capital, and it's soon to be available also in every community library, public community library. So you can go to any public community library and request for it.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for your contribution this morning.